Today is September the 5th, 2023. My name is Dick Rhodes. I'm the chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee. This is the first meeting of the year for Budget and Finance Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's 9 a.m. First thing we're going to do is we could stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. We have established a quorum. We have seven committee members present, and we have Mr. Bosak, who was remotely listening to the call. Gary, good morning.
Morning again, Dick, and everybody else.
Thank you. We want to review the minutes of June the 6th. Does anyone have any issue with them? And if not, I would like to hear a motion to approve them. So approved. All those in favor? Opposed? Yes. Okay, thank you. We have a microphone usage. There is a, for those of you who have printed the agenda and the attachments, there is a series of documents that is on the attachments with the agenda, and it talks about microphone usage. And a couple of things I'd like to say is the committee, you have to use the on and the off button. This is pretty remedial information. Be sure that when you're talking, you're on, and when you're not talking, you turn it off. We do have a new system in place where there are warning lights that will be displayed in the back of the room. So hopefully that will help us. For those in the audience, that if you wish to ask a question, if you'd come to the microphone at the floor, and when time comes for that, and speak into the microphone there as well. Does anyone have questions on the microphone usage? I want to introduce the committee. We have 3 new members on our committee this year. So I would like to introduce them, and I want to introduce the entire committee. But as I do that, I'll recognize them, and then I want to ask them to say something about themselves and about their desire to be on the Budget and Finance Committee. And the first is Lynn Kellis to my far right.
There it goes. Hi, I'm Lynn Kellis. I'm a owner here in Sun City West. I have a background of telecommunications management, about 25 years. I have also worked on the budget committee for Boring Fire Department during the merger to Clackamas County Fire. And I just take great interest in what's going on in our community. And I'm here, and hopefully I can be helpful to other homeowners in our area. Thank you.
I might add that Lynn is also the current president of the Clay Club and has been engaged in activities outside of in our clubs as well. So thank you. The next is Mr. Ray Davis.
Yes, I moved into Sun City West in 4 years ago, my wife and I, and I went to the Torch Committee, joined the Torch Academy 2 years ago, went through that process. I figured when I first moved here that it was something I wanted to get involved in, the governance of the community. After going through Torch, I saw what a broad view it was and how many opportunities there were. And so this last spring, or actually a year ago, I applied, and Dick contacted me this last spring and asked me to join the committee. We went through that process. I'm both excited and intimidated. I have about 30 years of operations management, including budgeting, and so I'm interested in just getting deeper into what we do here in Sun City West.
Thank you. To my immediate right is David Miller. David is a returning member of the committee from last year. This is his second year on the board. David?
Thank you, Dick. It's good to be back. I look forward to doing this all summer. It's always an interesting group and very good discussion. I've lived in Sun City West for 5 years now. My background is I'm a scientist by training. I spent most of my career working at one of the government's national laboratories in both research and executive management roles, which included a lot of operations and a lot of budgeting. So the reason I wanted to be on the committee is because I want to make a difference about where my family lives. This is a great place, and I think we can make it even better. Thank you.
Thank you, David. To my immediate left is Christine Novello, and I will say before I ask Christine to talk, Christine is on the governing board. This will be her first year. We're very excited about it. Christine is also returning for her second year on the Budget and Finance Committee. Christine?
Thank you, Dick, and good morning to my fellow residents and committee members. Christine Novello. I've been a resident of Sun City West now for, actually, I just got my rec dues renewal, so it's exactly 7 years today, actually. So wonderful to be here. Like the rest of you, I absolutely love Sun City West, and that compelled me to also take the Torch Academy last year. I joined the Budget and Finance Committee last year, and I'm honored to be joining the governing board for the next 3 years as well. I'm very passionate about the place that we live and representing all of us and all of our views. I bring to the table a lengthy career in management, consulting, and in board level, C-level financial commitments and assignments. I have an MBA in finance from the Wharton School of Business, so I have the academic background. But again, I think it's more the experience and the willingness to listen to my fellow committee members and to my fellow members and residents here that I'm most proud of bringing to the table. So again, really happy to be part of the committee for my second year and look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, Christine. On Christine's left is Mr. Dwayne Parsons. This is Dwayne's first year on the committee. So Dwayne?
Yes, good morning. I've lived in Sun City, my wife and I, for the last 6 years. I attended the Torch class last spring, found it to be very interesting. I'm recently going into semi-retirement from my 42-year career in the nuclear power and nuclear weapons complex. Last 20 years as a project manager, managing large construction, demolition, and environmental cleanup projects, some totaling over $100 million. Very excited to be on the board here and give back to our community, and very excited to serve here. So,
Thank you, Dwayne. Next is Mr. Frank Bagnato. This is also Frank's second year on the board, and Frank is a very positive member and a contributing member to the committee. So, Frank?
Thank you, Dick. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the support and the kind words that you always seem to have for each one of your committee members, and that means a lot to me when knowing that what we do is appreciated. I'm an 11-year resident of Sun City West. 9.5 years of that has been full-time. I'm a very avid golfer, anywhere between 3 and 4 times a week on average. As far as being here for a second term, I figured that I hadn't done enough damage in the first term, and so you ain't seen nothing yet.
Sounds like you're throwing down the gauntlet. The last person, and they're actually not a member of the committee, but they are kind of an ex officio, is Mr. Cliff Swan. Cliff is our CFO and is an extraordinary resource for us. So, Cliff?
Good morning, everyone, and I'm glad to be here today, and it's exciting to have the new members here, so look forward to working with you. We have a 8-person team in our finance department, and all of us have been here for roughly 2 to 5 years, depending on where you're at. We have some longer tenured employees. I've been here for 2 years, and we're excited to get this new committee season going.
Thank you. And running the risk of missing one person who is also an extraordinary resource for us. And he's returning this year again on the Budget and Finance Committee. He's not in the room, but he is online, is Mr. Gary Bosak.
Out of sight, out of mind, right, Dick?
I'm sorry, Gary? Gary, can you hear us?
You got me now?
Yes, we have you. Thank you.
Okay. Out of sight, out of mind. That was my point I was trying to make. But you all make me feel like the grizzled veteran. I've been in Sun City West 23 years, 4th year on the Budget and Finance Committee. And prior to that, I'd served on a number of different committees over the years, been very, very active. Spent a great deal of time in the golf world in Sun City West, and like to think that they had an impact on where that is conditioned today. But I've enjoyed the 4 years. I'm looking forward to the 4th, but the first 3 have been very interesting and worthwhile. For those of you that are new, you really can have an impact on the community. And I think all of us feel that way, otherwise we wouldn't be serving. My background was in retail for 32 years. I managed to stay with one company, Sears, but I retired in 2000 before all the garbage happened, and enjoyed that experience, obviously, and they were very good to me over the years. So I love Sun City West. I'll do anything to keep it the tremendous community that it is. There isn't anywhere that you go in the state that you don't mention it, that people aren't aware of it. It's a fabulous place to be, and I hope you all enjoy your experience on the committee as much as I have. And I enjoy looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. We're going to move on to item number 3.03, and that's the committee roster for all of the committees under the governing board. I'm not sure what I can say about that other than the roster is printed and it's available. It has the names of every committee member on the committees that are subordinate to the governing board. So that's something that you might find very, very useful. The next item is 3.04, using BoardDocs and accessing YouTube. This is going to be a very interesting topic. BoardDocs has been around for a long time. It is the ultimate referral source for us, not just the committee members, but for you as homeowners as well, because it provides all of the reference material as far as policies and bylaws and standing rules. And it's kind of the business side of Sun City West. Karen Repkin has been so kind to provide some tutorial data for us, information, and it is available on the agenda. It's printed, and I think it's actually there's too much in it to go over, other than I can give you a rough description of how to get to BoardDocs, and then I would strongly encourage you to go in and kind of play with it and look for particular items. So if you go into the RCSCW website, and then go to Governing Board, and then below Governing Board is BoardDocs, you'll come to it immediately. It isn't really hard to find, but you may have to play with the website a little bit and trial and error like you do with all websites till you learn how to use it. But once you get used to it, it's actually a very, very good source. The other thing that I want to talk about, and that's it's going to be new, it's new to us right now. We've really never tried this before, but it's accessing YouTube. It's the video component of this meeting. And there's also information on how to access the YouTube program in the same reference documents that Karen provided for us. But there's also something we're trying right now, and I just had a talk with Christine about this because it hasn't been done yet. So we don't know if we're doing it the right way or the wrong way yet, but, and we're going to discuss this at governing board at one of our training sessions. We'll be, and this was actually in response to the feedback that we received last year in the homeowner meetings, in that we're going to try to respond to questions that are submitted during the meeting via the YouTube. I'm going to call it the chat. I don't know if that's the right word for it. It's the chat icon or the chat feature in that. Whoever is watching it on YouTube will ask the question. Christine will receive it, and then she'll broker it back to me, and then I will either answer it or refer it to the community or to the committee or to whomever we can get to answer it. There are two opportunities that I see for that. One is after the discussion of an individual topic where we open it up for question. And then the other, and this one might be the most used, is at the end of the meeting when we ask for homeowner comments. And that will be a way to do that. Now, I can't tell you that if we're flooded with these, I'm not sure how we're going to respond to it. But part of this is we're going to have to figure this out as we go. So we're working with a system that wasn't designed for this, but we're trying to make it work for our own purpose. So at that, yes, please.
The reason why I'm sitting here with a computer in front of me, I'm not browsing my Facebook or anything. I'm actually monitoring. So for those of you who are watching, maybe you haven't been able to travel back to Sun City West yet from wherever you are, but we want all our members to be able to participate. And that's the reason why the governing board opened it up for our member meetings, and now we're trying it out for committee members and committee meetings too. So bear with us while we work through. There's going to be a delay if you're at home or wherever you are remotely and you're watching us live and you have questions that you type into chat. There's a bit of a delay. So if you ask a question and you're wondering why we're not responding to it, do give us a few minutes. Chairman Rhodes will invite people in the audience to come to the microphone and ask questions. That's your time to ask those questions, and then as Chairman Rhodes said, I will do my best to repeat those back to him and to the committee for response. So again, it's all about enabling greater participation and visibility to the community. I just wanted to add that. It's not really new. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's new to us in terms of committee business. So bear with us, and if we forget to do that, apologies in advance. We're going to do our best. Back to you, Dick.
Thank you, Christine. Next item is item 3.05. I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time on this either. This is the definition of the committee member handbook. It's published, and I'm certain that all of our committee members here have read it. If you haven't, I wouldn't admit to it right now, but no, I'm but it's something that, and I'll just highlight a few of the things that we'll do that we talk about. I'll just highlight a few of the things that we talk about. One of which is that we always have the interest of the homeowners in mind, that will be stewards of the money that doesn't belong to us, and we are very aware of that. This is your money that we're spending. Diplomacy, being courteous, and open and transparent in our deliberations. These are all the things that you can think of that is what we would want to be as a positive, productive committee. So for the benefit of this meeting, the actual official name is the Committee Member Handbook, and it is available through BoardDocs. And I would encourage you to look at that. And if you have any questions, you could probably ask any of the committee, any of the committees, but we would certainly entertain those as well. So we're going to do something right now and we're going to test this a little bit. I've gone through 5 different issues here. Normally, we would have a Q&A, a question opportunity for questions after each one, but these were really more housekeeping chores. So we'll do a one-time. If anyone has questions, either in this room or that's watching on video, please ask. Now, I'm not going to wait. We're going to go ahead and proceed with the meeting because there is a delay. But if there, yes, you have an issue.
There are just 2 comments that have come in. One of our residents, Sean Kemps, thanks us for letting us join, and thanks, hopefully I'm pronouncing everybody's names correctly. Benita Howe appreciates us working with live feedback. Live feedback during the session.
Okay, the new business. This is going to be an interesting session. I'm going to tell you in advance right now that we heard some very interesting comments at the homeowner meetings, and we have taking them to heart. And we're going to try to address them as well as we can, as transparently as we can, and as thoroughly as possible. And with that first, and those are my editorial comments are all, but the first speaker we're going to have is going to be Cliff Swan, and he's going to talk about our financials, including our end-of-year financial status reports. Cliff?
Thank you, Director Rhodes, and again, good morning, everyone. We're going to present the June year-to-date fiscal year 2023 financials, and then also attached is the May financial. We'll present June year-to-date, but on BoardDocs is the May year-to-date financial as well. So with that said, we'll get started. So taking a look at June actuals compared to June budget, you'll see that we finished the month of June $145,000 favorable on the revenue side, $62,000 attributable to golf. Golf really rallied last 2 months of the year, and we finished out at 323,000 rounds, which we were very happy about. On the expense side for the month, we finished 34,000 favorable, and had some mild temperatures, which helped on the utility side for the month of June, and then repairs and maintenance. We had some. That's more due to timing, but utilities came in a little higher because of the weather. Repairs and maintenance came in a little higher. Overall, 34,000 favorable, 33 of which was in wages and benefits. So looking at the operating cash inflow for the month, we are 179,000 favorable with a 335,000 cash outflow and beating budget of 514,000. switching to year-to-date, for the year, keep in mind these are unaudited financials, and we don't expect that they're going to change, but we'll be presenting audited financials in the middle of October when CLA comes out. But for the year, we finished out favorable $790,000 to budget. And then on the expense side, 395 unfavorable, some things that kind of hit us unexpected, unbudgeted for the year. One of those was our health insurance came in significantly higher than budgeted. And then on the supplies and services line item, big portion of that is fuel. Gas prices for the year last year were significantly higher than budgeted, as well as we decided to use some subcontracted services in for after-hours cleaning, which offset to wages and benefits, but that line item was increased due to that.
Cliff, did the health insurance premium fall under supplies and services?
No, that's in wages and benefits.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, of course it is. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Dick. Are we going to
Frank,
be
Mr.
able,
Bognato? Yeah.
yeah, are we going to be able to ask questions during the presentation, or do we need to?
I think if we can ask a question, if it's about the particular issue that he's talking about, but if it's more of a philosophical issue, I think I'd like to wait until after the presentation.
The question I had was about the health insurance premium. It was an unexpected increase, so our fiscal year and their billing cycle differs, and would that explain why we didn't realize it?
Yes, so we begin the negotiations, let's call it, for health insurance through our broker. Those usually begin in August, September range, and our renewals are effective January 1. So we have 6 months worth of history to look at to determine what may or may not happen with our rates.
Sure.
Yep.
Good, thanks.
You're welcome.
Dick, I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Brosak?
Cliff, our year-to-date for membership over previous year was only $3,000. Is there something else in membership other than just member dues? I think there is, but I don't know that. And we had a 2.4% budgeted increase, but yet we wound up virtually even with the previous years. What else is in there?
Okay, so yeah, there's plenty of things in membership revenue. The largest is our dues from our members, our associate members. We also have landlord dues, and then we've also got our tenant transactions, our transaction fees for our home sales. Our transfer fees are also in there, and as well as our membership guest fees are also in there. So that's the bulk of what's in membership dues. I would say that when we present a dues increase, we only see for the first year 6 months of that because
Right.
of the timing of when we budget versus, generally speaking, people renew at different times of the year. So if we have a new rate that's presented in June, but someone's membership dues aren't due until May, we'll only see 1 month of a membership dues increase from someone who renews their dues in May. So we generally say about half of the membership dues increase actually is impacted in the following year.
Great,
In the
thank
first
you.
year. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, so for the year, finished the year at roughly 1.6 million on a budget of roughly 1.2 million. So 395,000 or roughly 400,000 favorable to budget. Which, keep in mind that this operating cash inflow goes right to the reserve fund as part of our reserve fund calculation. In fiscal year 24, we're presenting this in a different way, and this is going to be presented as estimated reserve fund allocation. There'll be a specific line item for that, and what that'll do is it'll just adjust to the operating inflow outflow. Okay, so it's still part of the reserve fund calculation, but it will adjust to that line item, and we'll have a running total of what we expect to go into the reserve fund throughout the year. So comparing fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 22, you'll see that we finished roughly 1.6 million unfavorable to last fiscal year. Most of that attributable to increased operating expenses, wages, and benefits. So if we look at that, wages and benefits over prior year was $1.7 million dollar increase, mainly due to some competitive wage adjustments, our health insurance costs, also the minimum wage increase. So all expected and budgeted for, but that's the main increase in our year-over-year expense line items. And then you could see utilities as well as supplies and equipment, and some of the other things were, as our revenue grows, so do our charges, our bank charges, things like that. So that also grew over prior year.
Cliff, could I ask you a question on the wages and benefits?
Sure.
You said it's 1.7 million dollars.
Yes.
What do you have an idea what percentage that is increase? If you don't
Not
have
off
it,
the top
it's,
of my head, but
if you don't have it, it's
for you.
okay. But I would be interested in seeing that. Did you have it, Frank? Yeah. I think it's important when we talk. It's one thing to see $1.7 million. It's another thing to see what percent it is.
About 12%, 11.5%.
And that's attributable to the competitive wage adjustments, increased health insurance costs? Because we did.
That's correct. Yes.
What did you say? That was 12 point what? 11 point. Thank you.
This year's budget, we budgeted a 8% increase in wages and benefits.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, so taking a look at the capital section, things to pay close attention to here are APF fees and then the investment income. You can see that, APFs for the month kind of rallied too. It's funny, APF fees in golf usually kind of follow the same trend. We experienced significantly higher golf rounds and APF fees in fiscal year 22. They both kind of shot up. And then for the fiscal year, they tapered off, both of them this year. And we kind of attribute that to the economy, right? The market. So those types of revenue streams aren't as guaranteed as our member dues. So just something, to understand about APF fees and golf rounds. So when we look at our APF fees for the month of June, we kind of rallied and finished $145,000 favorable to budget for the month of June. And then if you look at the investment income, collectively with the investment income and then the realized, unrealized gains and losses, finished for the month of June $120,000 favorable, roughly.
So I assume that the reason why the June for realized and unrealized gain is left blank is we don't have the report from Cap Trust yet.
No, so June, we don't budget for realized, and that's the budget column. Okay. So the June actual column is actual, and then we don't budget unrealized and realized gains or losses. And then we do in budget the investment income, however. So taking a look at the capital section year-to-date, we finished at 367,000 unfavorable for the year in APF fees. That was roughly 87 APF transactions off a budget, and which again kind of rallied the last 2 months of the year, which really helped because it was really looking kind of tepid in the first half of the year. So we were happy with the results in June and finished out 367 unfavorable for the year. Realized gains and losses with the investment income, we were basically flat to budget. However, we don't budget unrealized gains and losses, but the unrealized gains and losses for the year were 266,000 unfavorable.
Cliff, before you move on,
Yes.
so exactly how many houses were we short?
87 APF fees short.
Okay.
Say that again? What?
87 APF fees short.
So the total was how many houses that we did?
We did 1,115, 85, sorry. When you take the number and divide it by 4,200, it's 87. So there's
So our
some
target
timing.
was, our target was 1,200, and we ended up a little over 1,100.
That's correct. 1115.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Cliff?
Yes, sir.
Cliff?
Yeah, Gary?
Yes, Gary.
What were the APF or home sales for July and August? I know you don't have August closed yet, but you got a pretty good idea. We're looking at a reversal. Do we have a positive trend starting again, or was June kind of an anomaly?
No, we're starting to see a little bit of a cooling, flatlining in July and August. July was on par with last year, and then August was a little less.
But
Yeah, I
that's
think-
not bad compared to the way we were trending before.
It's not bad when we look at the trend from 23 to 22. When we look at the trend from 24 to 23, it's less of a downward trend. However, we are a little bit behind through August on APF
Okay.
fees that we budgeted.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so we talked a little bit about it, the APFs compared to prior year. Even with an APF increase in the APF amount to 4,200, we still finished 1.1 million off of prior year when it comes to APF fees. And then looking at investment income, we had a much better year in 2023 in our reserve fund than we did in 2022. Okay, so taking a look at the capital related, again, we talked about APF fees, 1,000.
Cliff, could we back up a minute?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I had made a note when I reviewed these a couple days ago that it looks like that we're doing much better with our investments. With our investments. So I look at the unrealized gain and loss year to date, and I look at our investment income, which is, I mean, even though 718,000 is not a lot, but it's still a goodly amount of money. Does that tell us then that our reserve or our investments are doing better?
Well, they performed better, so because you're looking over year changes.
right.
So we finished the year at 266,000 unfavorable when it comes to, or loss when it comes to our realized, unrealized valuation change versus last year at $3.5 million valuation change. So yes, we had a much better year in investments. They lost a lot less in valuation, okay? The investment income, I'm glad you bring that up because that's a really important number. That's going to be close to $1 million this year. And that's the return, the dividends that we're receiving on some of the things that we're investing in. And that offsets that realized, unrealized gains and loss, but that's actual dollars which get reinvested into the fund.
I was just looking to see when Cap Trust is to be presenting for the first time. I don't see it on my agendas for the future. But
I believe they're in October. They're on there. Yeah, we got them on there.
I thought we did.
Oh, November. Oh, check November. I think it's the first one in November. We moved them down. They were in October, but we moved them down to November.
Oh, it is. It's no. The reason I say this, and I want to say it to everybody in the audience, everyone listening, if you want to follow up on this, on our investment, on the performance of our investments, Cap Trust is a professional investor, and they will presenting to us on November the 3rd, on the November 3rd Budget and Finance Committee meeting. So,
Correct.
go ahead. Thanks, Cliff.
Okay, you're welcome.
Dick, I have a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bogdano.
Cliff, regarding investment income, you use the word dividends, but given that our portfolio only has a modest amount of actual equities in it, are you speaking of dividends from the funds that we are invested in? Wouldn't they then be interest income? In other words, that $718,000 in investment income, shouldn't a substantial portion of that be interest?
It is, yes. There's
Okay.
yes, interest and dividends.
Okay.
Yes, you're correct. Okay, so looking at the capital related, just some notables here are, of course, APF fees. We talked about that. We finished prior year at 1,613, so 500 APFs roughly off from prior year. Thankfully, we did have the increase in the rate, which helped offset some of that loss, but still a $1.1 million unfavorable variance to prior year when it comes to APFs. And then again, the investment income, $294,000 favorable over prior year. That's going to continue to grow this year. So looking at the revenues over under expenses, kind of talked about it on the operating side, $395,000 favorable, capital side, $425,000 unfavorable. You know, just missed that budget number by $30,000. Not too bad. Looking at prior year, $680,000 favorable bottom line. All right, switching gears to capital. Last year we budgeted, fiscal year 23, we budgeted $10.8 million in our capital budget, and through the end of the year with closed POs, we were $92,000 favorable on that number on our capital spend.
Cliff, I'm sorry. Could we back up?
Of course.
I have a note here, that I'd made. On the revenues over under expenses, operating cash inflow outflow, June actual to prior year was 1.56 million, and last year was 3.143 million, and that left almost a $1.6 million deficit. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so we talked about, so on the operating side, we talked about those revenues. So we came in $500,000 above prior year in revenue, but finished out $2 million. Well, let me go back to that. I don't want to give you the wrong number. Oops. So 562 in operating revenue favorable and 2.1 million unfavorable, and we on the expenses. So we talked about those wage increases being a large component of that, but on the revenue side, we had 333,000 rounds of golf in fiscal year 22, and we finished the year out about 10,000 rounds less. So that impacted on the revenue side as well, because we had golf rate increases. So you've got the impact of the rate increase, but the offset of the drop in rounds. So if we look at those revenue line items, prior year variance golf fees finished at $409,000 ahead of prior year. However, that's with a decrease of 10,000 rounds. So we didn't get that dollar for dollar on the expense side will never happen, but we didn't get the benefit of those golf rounds. And that was the largest contributor, that and home sales, transfer fees, things like that happened in fiscal year 22 that just didn't materialize for us last year. And this is why it's important not only to look at that, income or the under/over expenses line item, you've also got to look down in the capital section and see what's going on with APF fees and what's going on with the investments. Because it's the whole package, the whole picture that you got to look at when you're talking about the reserve fund and that reserve fund calculation and how much money we either have to put in or draw from that reserve fund.
Hey, Dick, I think
Frank.
I think I have something to add. Can we go to slide 15? That's the one. So where it says operating cash inflow, outflow, it appears that we missed the target by almost $1.6 million. But when comparing end of June 2023 to end of June 2022, in the prior fiscal year, many of us should recall that it was a banner year. There was the word huge windfall thrown out for that prior fiscal year. And so to try and compare the current fiscal year to a previous fiscal year that had results way better than budget isn't being fair to the current year at all. Does that help you a little bit, Rick?
I'm not sure if it's not fair or not. I think this is an issue of points of time. In June, it was one thing on last year, and it's a different thing. So although it does look lopsided, I think it's kind of an artifact of the numbers. That's the way they kind of fall.
We had far, far, far more APF fees due to huge number of home sales in the prior fiscal year. So when you look at the results for the prior fiscal year, we did way better than we thought we would. And so this year, we're maybe a little bit kind of back to normal, maybe a little bit below what was anticipated. But to compare it to the prior fiscal year, it kind of is maybe an apples and oranges sort of thing.
And that's what we have to keep in mind when we read this, is that it may not be as it appears. Okay. Cliff, thank you.
I will add though, but as expected. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so back to capital. So we're taking a look at our capital spend. Again, $10.8 million in projects this year, or in fiscal year 23. Year to date for closed POs, $92,000 in savings. And by the time all of those get closed out, we're anticipating a $64,000 savings on that $10.8 million. And I'll give an update on what we're encumbering into next year. That'll be on a slide coming up here. But taking a look at, these are all the items for the fiscal year 23 budget. The highlighted rows indicate the projects, completed projects. So we've got some big projects. We're still in the midst of, the Grandview irrigation project, for example, and Detour project. We're on schedule with that, and we'll talk about what we got carrying into next year here on an upcoming slide. But if we look at our allowances for the year, $400,000 budgeted for allowances. We spent $394,000 with a roughly $6,000 savings in allowances. Attached on the next few slides are a detail of what those allowance monies were used for. A couple notables in here is we had two things, one for Friends of the Library and one for our ARC club that were both funded by those clubs. So yes, we used allowance money for it, but we were funded from those clubs for those projects. And then the other notable in here is we had a Electrical issue. We've got a 45-year-old facility here. We had 2 electric lines basically fail on us that we had to repair. We are in discussions with our insurance company to see if those can be covered under insurance right now, but we had to pay for those repairs, and that's the $19,195 and the $39,163 you see on the allowance list that hit at the end of the year. Fortunately, we have allowance funds to cover such emergencies, and hopefully we'll see if we can get those covered under insurance or not. Again, 45-year-old facility. Not sure if we're going to be able to get those covered or not, but we're working with our insurance company and brokers to see if we can't get that covered. Okay, so I talked a little bit about what we're going to be carrying forward on our capital budget from 2023. So you'll see we're going to talk about, especially at the time of the audit, we talk about our reserve fund calculation, and basically it's, you know, the money that we took in from operations that we have left over from operations that we incorporate into our reserve calculation, and plus our APF fees, plus our investment income, and then we tally that up, and then we see how much money that balance is, and then how much of that of our capital improvements can we fund. Okay, so that 10.8 million, how much of that are we able to fund through operations and APF fees, investment income? There's some other small ones in there as well. So we had to carry this $4.3 million forward into the next year because we encumber our capital spend. So if we don't spend it, we don't lose it, because we still have projects we still need to do. And because of the timing of when our community members are here and when we can do capital projects, a lot of these have to get carried because just timing of when people are here and when people are not. So we carried these projects. We detailed anything over 50,000 on here, and then lumped everything else, all others 197. But a total of 4.3 million is getting encumbered into our calculation for our reserve fund calculation into fiscal year 24. So how did we finish the year? Well, we like to say in finance, it's all about the reserve fund. And so let's take a look at that. So the reserve fund and the FFB percent through the end of fiscal year 23, we finished at budgeted, what we budgeted, which is 50%. We anticipate, based on the valuations at the time, that our FFB percent finished at 50%. And that's taking all of the favorable and unfavorable items to budget and calculating those down into our reserve fund balance and then our fully funded balance and what percent we have of that, which is 50%. That concludes my financial presentation.
Cliff, as usual, you've done an excellent job. We do appreciate that. But I want to open questions. I want to open the floor to the committee to see if they have any questions for you. Okay, hearing none. Cliff, did you want to talk about the financial report at all? It looks like it's a summary of the same data that you had.
Oh, yes, it is. So my presentation just gives a kind of rolled up version of our financial statements, but attached to those, we always attach the kind of a not detailed financial statement, but a summary of the detailed financial statement is attached. And on that financial statement, and Terry, if you want to bring up one of those and just you can scroll back up just to the income statement. Just want to talk about that a little bit. So at the top, you'll see this looks very familiar to everybody, especially if you've gone through the budgeting process. We like to categorize all of our revenue and expense line items, and then down in this capital section, it's more detailed just because those are kind of individual line items. But So when I'm giving the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, it's a rolled up version of this. And then we also, Frank asked me earlier about golf. He'd like to see one of these for golf. We present this at the golf committee, and it's attached in BoardDocs. The same financial for golf, and the same thing at bowling and sports pavilion. Same divisional P&L, same categories, expense and revenue. So if you ever want to see those, they'll be come to those committees, and when they're presented, and they're also attached to the BoardDocs.
Okay, so if there's no questions from the committee, I would like to open it up to questions from our homeowners, anyone in the room, or anyone that might be online.
Just a comment while we're waiting for that. For those of you here or watching remotely, go to BoardDocs as Dick was showing or explaining before. When you navigate through BoardDocs, in order to find this and everything we're discussing today is posted there. Look into the meeting agenda, and then for each of these points, you'll see a little document. That's where you find this information today and every meeting every month.
Thank you. I think we're going to go ahead and move forward. If we do get any comments regarding or any questions for Cliff as we proceed, we'll probably hold those until the end of the meeting, and we will respond to them at that time. We don't have anything right now. Okay. One of the things that we learned last year during the homeowner meetings, that there's a great deal of emotion and a great deal of interest in how we deal with credit card fees. And we want to make those discussions open and transparent and as visible as possible. Cliff is going to have some comments on credit card, the environment, the requirements of credit card, both if we apply it or if we don't apply it or however. But there's going to be time on, I think, the next 3 meetings that we're holding time for credit card discussion before we will actually make a final recommendation to the governing board. So I encourage you to listen carefully and to engage should you wish to engage. And at that, I'm going to turn this over to Cliff for his comments regarding use of credit cards and fees and the banking fees.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we are compiling a bunch of data and information. Just wanted to share an update with this committee, just kind of some statistical analysis of what types of payments we accept and what percentage of those types are used in what areas. So we're finding, first of all, that going through this analysis, we talk about, our credit card fees are roughly $600,000 per year. And that credit card expense has always been there. It's just increased over time. So we've operated that way, but as our revenue grows, that we're roughly 2.65% on our transactions. As our revenue grows, so does that expense. Okay, because it's just a percentage of what we collect. So what will also cause that to grow is if more people are using credit cards for payment, which it's the way of society, right? Everything is moved to convenience, and credit cards is part of that plan. And the financial institutions have done a good job of basically getting their foot in the door by incenting cardholders to use cards through points, and also incenting businesses to use those forms of payment to help cut down on their costs. Because there is an offset there, and as we investigate this process, we're finding that. And so we're putting some numbers behind that analysis, and you know, it's kind of tricky because we have to look at behaviors as well. So what would happen if we did this? How would that change the behaviors of our customers? And if they switch their form of payment to avoid a fee by using a credit card, what does that look like to the operations of the rec centers? And, you know, we're kind of different here. We're not, you know, if you go to a Betty's Roost, for example, and you have lunch, okay, if you use a credit card over there, they're charging you a processing fee. They do. So, but they have one point of sale and they have one type of thing they're charging for, food. Okay, we have multiple points of sales and multiple different types of revenue streams, multiple different types of businesses, let's call them. So we're doing a very deep dive into this process, because when we look at that $600,000, and if we say, oh boy, if we could just avoid that cost, it's a $600,000 savings. It is not. And we want to put all this information together for this committee and for the board to be able to make an intelligent decision about what we do with credit card and credit card processing. So we're in the middle of that now, but I do want to share some information with you. So we've got, you know, our two main, let's call them, or our three main sources of collecting money is our membership, golf, and sports pavilion. We collect roughly $35 million a year in those areas. So $35 million in sales is what we collect. Overall, 63% of that is paid by a credit card. 32% is paid with check, and 5% is paid with cash. $35 million overall sales, 63% in credit card, 32% in check, and 5% in cash, and there's some other in there, but
And the total sales, I know you're giving us some big numbers. This is for membership, golf?
Correct.
Please repeat. Thank you.
correct, that's correct. So in membership alone, it's 22.6 million. In golf, it's 10.8 million. So these are on last year numbers. Okay, and then we have sports pavilions 1.4.
So I have to admit to being kind of confused. I'm looking at year-to-date May. I'll find the other June figure, but year-to-date May, actual total revenues just under 25.96 million.
Mhm.
How did we get to 35 million? Where is that?
So you have to add into that APF fees?
Okay, answered the question.
Okay. And then some of our revenues are also like in merchandise and food and beverage. We report those in gross profit, or we offset the revenue with the expense up in the revenue section when it comes to food and beverage and merchandise.
Let me back that up a little bit to APF fees. So I suspect that nearly all of APF fees are collected during the real estate closing process. How many people actually come in and pay the APF fee with a credit card?
You're correct. You're correct. So I can give you I'm going to give some more detailed numbers into membership and golf, because those are our two largest areas. But you're correct, Frank. Yep, those are usually done through the closing process with a check a lot of times. But if we look at golf and their sales, 86% of golf is paid by a credit card. And then 12% in cash, and then we've got some kind of other miscellaneous payment types in there. Checks being one. We don't collect a lot of checks in golf.
Where would member credit fall in that?
That's going to be in the membership section, because those are at those points of sale. But did you break them out, Terry, in the golf? Did you distribute those to golf?
Okay, thanks. Going forward, I know you're doing this detailed, that would be very interesting data point to have.
Right, but if someone paid via credit card and membership, that's going to for golf, that's going to be showing membership right now. Yeah, but we'll get that number. Okay, so when we look in membership, 53% of our transactions are paid via credit card and membership, 46% via check. So anyway, just wanted to kind of put some of those numbers together and put some of those numbers out there. So just to kind of get your juices flowing in terms of how we collect the roughly 35 million in sales that we currently have. And, making a change, this is a big change. There's a lot of things to consider here. And we're in the process of considering those. And we'll do the best that we can to lay out all that information in front of you so you can be as informed as possible.
So Cliff, exactly what's your schedule for providing that information to us?
Dick, do you have that on your
I do.
calendar?
Cliff was just going to provide a kind of a teaser for us today, just to kind of officially open the notice of intent to begin dialogue on the credit card fees. He really, in Cliff's defense, he was not really ready to present anything. I kind of hit him with this kind of broadsided, but he was kind enough to say that he'll do this session. Next meeting on September the 19th, we'll have a more comprehensive, and I presume you'll have a handout at that time, Cliff, on September 19th?
Yeah, so yes, we will. We recently got some of the information back from our bank. So they did an analysis on our bank charges and so we need to do an analysis on how those would change, because taking checks and cash is a lot more expensive than in terms of bank charges from Chase Bank than taking credit cards. So we have to do some analysis around that, which we're working on. And then we've also got we're doing some labor analysis as well. A little bit of infrastructure as well. If we're going to be, if our cash intake, which is 5% right now, climbs to 10% or 15%, one of the things we would have to consider is armored car service, which we currently don't have. We take our deposits, because they're small in terms of cash, and deposit them in the night deposit box at the bank. So that would be a significant expense that we'd have to incur if our cash and our exposure increased significantly, which we're anticipating that it would. So that's another thing we have to consider. There's also limitations, and we're talking right now with TEI when it comes to what our capabilities actually are and what type of programming may need to be written to do this. We know that programming will need to be written. One of the things as we're investigating this, for example, is it's illegal to charge a processing fee for a debit card. It's illegal. Flat out, you can't do it. You're not supposed to do it. Well, all I'll say is I don't know how these points of sale know if it's a credit card or a debit card, because a lot of them will look identical. They process the transaction the same way. So if we're going to have to identify those, how do we identify them? And at what point during the transaction does that get identified? And how do we list that on a receipt? So there's kind of some nuances within this. And do we even have the ability to do that, to communicate that this is a debit card versus a credit card? So there's some really detailed things that we're working on right now. So, and then this will also be part of that analysis, what we have to do, what type of, programming and things that we'd have to invest in to make this work properly if we rolled it out.
Well, I think one of the things we understand very clearly is it's never as easy as it appears to be. And that's exactly what we had hoped to do today. We don't expect to have a whole lot more information from you today, Cliff. What we wanted to do was to have this just kind of kick off our intent to have an open, transparent dialogue. We will have a more comprehensive presentation from Cliff at the next meeting on the 19th of September. And that one, I expect that we'll have a great deal of involvement from the committee, and hopefully we'll have a great deal of involvement from our homeowners, either in the room or online. So our intent is to do that. We are reserving time for the next 3 meetings after this, so we'll have sufficient time to discuss thoroughly credit card issues, credit card transactions, kind of the whole rubric of everything that's associated with it. So, Cliff, it's very clear that, there are issues that you have discovered that we didn't know about, but we still have to make a bigger decision on what's best for the community, maybe not for today or next year, but when we look forward in 5 years or 3 years, what's the best answer going to be? So, and I don't know that I have that answer, and I don't think that anybody in this room has that answer just yet. So,
Hope to get you everything you need to make that decision.
I have a question for Mr. Bogdato.
Cliff, are you anticipating that if we did impose this fee, that suddenly everybody's going to be running in and paying cash or writing checks? In other words, do you think that the imposition of a fee is going to seriously change people's behavior? Me personally, I spent a lot of money here. Virtually all of it is a credit card. But if someone told me that I had to pay a fee, and if I chose an alternate method of payment, me personally, again, I would choose the alternate method of payment all day long, because to impose credit card fees on my family, hundreds of dollars in fees, because I play a lot of golf. But I think that for the most part, most golfers are just going to suck it up and pay the fee, and particularly if we were charging them 3% of a $50 transaction, it's really not a big deal. So I get it that potentially you might have to get an armored car service because you could suddenly be taking in huge amounts of cash. I'm surprised, having worked in a golf shop and knowing what happens on holiday weekends, particularly during the winter season, that there's a lot of cash on the premises. And so I'm surprised that we don't at least use an armored car service during the winter.
Yeah.
As far as member dues, I mean, for me to, for my family to just write a check and pay our dues, knowing that we won't have to pay that credit card fee, it's a substantial number.
Yeah, we'll have to, we'll have to assign some sort of assumptions when we're doing this, and it'll all through discussion we can do that, and also help kind of dial in what we think the impact will be.
Let me make an editorial comment here. My original intent on this discussion was to create a working group, so that working group would be able to grasp some of these issues, many of these issues. But I think that it's way too important of an issue that we have all of our deliberations will be open. And Frank, you make some excellent points, and those are issues that I think if we went to every person on this committee and perhaps everybody in the room, they would have something else to add that would compound that. So what we're facing is a very complicated issue. There's not going to be a simple answer, but our job is to evaluate what the options are, whether they be painful or not painful. That's our job, is to do that. So thank you for stepping forward to kick this off like this, and we're looking forward with great excitement to your presentation on the 19th of September. Okay.
Nick, I have a comment.
Yes, Gary?
Primarily for the benefit of Dwayne and Ray. Lynn, I know you've been to a lot of these meetings, so you've probably heard all the conversation, but we really exhausted this topic last year ad nauseum. And we clearly came down on the fact that we didn't have a lot of data that we needed to make decisions. So what Cliff's doing today is kind of reopening the conversation, but the committee actually came down on the recommendation to the board to implement the charge. And the board, correct, Dick?
That's correct.
And the board said they would not do that. So the committee came to a conclusion last year based on everybody's feelings. There's no way to measure this, but I would say the comments publicly that I was exposed to, which were many, it's a 50-50 issue. And one of the most important considerations I think that this committee agreed to last year was we had to have alternatives. To just flat out impose this on people, thinking that we were going to solve everybody's anxiety over the possibility of it, wasn't going to work. We had to come up with alternatives. And I think, Cliff, and whatever you're going to put together, the end result of that should probably enable us to make recommendations on what alternatives might be available. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Does anyone else? Christine?
Thank you, Dick. Two things. First of all, my question, I think Gary touched on it, going back to last year, is among the alternatives, please ask Chase Bank about the fees associated with doing a check online for folks that do want to, we want to offer that as a payment option for some of our bigger ticket items. The other thing, Dick, is that we do have a question from already in YouTube. I don't know if there are any questions in the room. Just wanted to let you know.
Let's hold that for right now. I want to finish this up, and then before we move on, I think that it's appropriate for you to try to prepare that question for us. Okay. Does anyone else have a comment? David?
So, Cliff, when we were beating this to death last year, I did a lot of reading about credit card fees, and there's multiple components of credit card fees. Some of them are charged by the bank, and it's dependent on the card that's being used. But others are by the credit card processing company that we choose to use.
Correct.
And, you know, a lot of things were brought in front of the committee, workman's comp insurance, health insurance, whatnot. But there was never a lot of discussion or any background information on how we chose our current credit card servicing provider, whether that, and, you know, obviously we're paying them a huge amount of money, which is on the same level as our health premiums and all the other kind of stuff. And I'm wondering why that information has never been brought in front of the committee in terms of how did we select that vendor, what their fee structure is, how often do we review that? I think that's something that does need to come in front of the committee in the future. Because obviously, and I made this comments last year, I believe that we're going to continue to climb the mountain on the credit card fees, and they're just going to keep going up. So before long, it's not going to be $600,000. It's going to be $1 million. So I think there needs to be some more discussion and transparency about how that whole process works. So I hope in your review of all this information that you're not losing sight of that particular fact.
Okay.
It was a great comment, David. Does anyone else on the committee? Yes, Dwayne.
Yes, for the people that are new to the committee, that weren't involved in the discussions last year, it might be helpful for us to hear the discussions that happened last year. You know, just a summary of that and get educated on the process a little bit more.
Yeah, I think what we can do with that, the best way to do that is to go back into our historical YouTube recordings and actually sit through the duration. It's not the whole meeting. You'll find the hotspot for all the credit card discussions. Then you'll hear not just the comments, but the emotion and the passion that's put into this. So, and I would say that to all three of our new members, that might be your homework for next time, is to go back onto YouTube, and especially during the owners meeting. That's where we heard probably the most passionate comments made. But there are previous BNF meetings that we had where, I don't know, David, if it was you or Gary that said that the original recommendation went to the governing board from Budget and Finance was unanimous, that we charge our homeowners credit card fees. Well, that was.
That we
over-
pass along the fee
Thank you, you're
for
absolutely correct.
associated with credit card processing, and that we share it universally and equally. Thank you.
Thank you, that's absolutely correct. But due to other issues that came up, that was reversed. So if we have no other questions from the committee, I will open it up to the floor. If anyone has a comment they wish to make. Do you have Christine, if you would.
Question is there a technology committee to help sort through the software considerations?
I'm going to partially answer that, but I'm going to divert to Cliff and also to our IT department. As far as I'm concerned, I do believe that you get collegial cooperation from your IT department that helps you identify what the IT capacities and limitations are.
Yes, there's no committee in the community, IT community, or IT committee in the community, if that's the question. I'm not aware of one. But
That
yes.
was the question.
Okay. But yes, we certainly work hand in hand with our IT department because our software it's not a homegrown software. I will say it's been customized over time, TEI. But that when that happens, it also creates, I think the IT world likes to call it stickiness. I call it, it presents more challenges and hurdles the more you customize it. So, because you have to then incorporate all those customizations into any changes that are made. So it becomes very complicated.
So we don't have a committee, but what we do have are people that have an IT background and understanding on what our limitations and capacities are.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that would be our second choice. So, okay. Are there any other questions? If not, we'll move on to the next topic. Thank you. The next issue is 4.03. This is actually another item that was surfaced last year at our owner meeting, and it's the question of having a family pass of some type. I'm not sure what we can do right now about that. I think what I would like to do is to plant this thought into the minds of those people on this committee right now, and to our homeowners to help us sort out what issues are involved with this. I don't think it's as easy as going to the Disney website and trying to figure out how they do their family passes, but we may be able to come up with some ideas or things. So, Christine?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Dick. There was I don't have the homeowner's name, but a homeowner worked up an entire prototype and an approach for the governing board and budget and finance to consider, and she offered that at the member meeting last year. Do we have that on file?
I don't think so. I'm sorry. I don't think we do.
So perhaps we can go back to the YouTube channel for that meeting, find that homeowner's good work and her name and her rec card number, which are on recording, and reach out and ask for a copy. I would love to have that for us to look at.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. I'm going to assign that task to Lynn Kellis.
Thank you, Lynn. Dick, another question, just to sort of plant the seed for Cliff and team. One of the things that I remember from last year, without the specifics, when we went through all the budgeting exercises and so forth, the guest fees themselves are relative to the huge numbers that we just looked at for, what we collect, really very small in the grand scheme of things. I know they're important, but they're small. Could you, as a part of our deliberations, prepare for us a viewpoint of what some of the what would happen if we simply decided to take a little holiday during the holiday period for guest card collections during 3 or 4 periods of time while we're deliberating a family pass concept, which presumably if we wanted one, we would not be able to implement that until next year, next fiscal year. Could you take a little look at what do we collect for guest card fees during some of the larger holiday periods? Maybe we could consider, some of the members that approached me during that meeting and after said, could we just suspend the collection, either permanently or maybe not permanently, but in other words, rather than going through the time of creating this whole pass and so forth. Could you look into that for us? I don't know if you know it off the top of your head.
Well, I have an overall number. So it's 244,000 a year we collect in guest fees. That's the overall number, and I can break that down by month.
Yeah, month or
I
I think that might help.
Day. I mean, I could probably go for holiday periods and things like that. So I can gather that type of
Yeah,
information.
I think a rough indication of what we collect per week, so that perhaps we could consider that as an alternative approach for families that are gathering here.
Yeah, and I looked at some of the data because we do track every time we touch or interact with someone, and it's roughly 80,000 interactions with guests. So I say that because that's the expense side of it, right? Like, how do you measure the expense? So when you're interacting with guests, there's a cost there, and so something to keep in mind. And then again, the revenue was 244,000 for the year, and guest fee, 80% of that was for guests over 18 or over, and 20% was for under 18. And then as far as monthly or periods in time, I can gather some of that information.
Dick, I have a thought, please.
Yes, Gary?
Dick, I see this as an operating issue, the staff issue. They've got the data, they've got the information. I think it might be wise to have them do the evaluation, put the facts together in a recommendation and present that to us, rather than us try to initiate something. I think we should be the catalyst to maybe get them to take a peek at it as a follow-up to the public comments, but this really gets outside our bailiwick. This is really a policy thing.
I think I agree with you. Cliff, would it be possible to do like a scatter diagram where you have by day or by week payments, fees that were paid? So we could look at that, and if we did, this is just a scenario, let's say, what if we said, okay, we're going to do this around Christmas and Thanksgiving, and Christmas week and Thanksgiving week, that we would know what the question of revenue was in that period?
I can do, yeah.
Yeah, well, if you would, I think that would give us, I think that would help us with some traction. David?
I was just going to tell Dick he needs to do spring break too, because you get a lot of people at that time of year. So,
Well, that was just a scenario. That's all it was. It was not inclusive whatsoever. So, and that's why we really don't know what we don't know right now. And so we need to see what the activity is, and then take a look at this. We may have to put a couple people together to study this, because I think that this might be something more than we can just do on the fly in a committee setting. So.
And again, that would be a great, these are more operational. There's more to this, like we're learning, right? There's more to this on the operational side than it would seem to be, I would imagine, right? How do we train people, the new pass, and so on and so forth. So just a quick view for us so that we can respond to our members who have asked for that consideration would be really helpful. One of those considerations would be maybe we pick a couple of times a year that we would suspend, what would that cost us? I don't know, but if you could look at that, that was my suggestion.
Well, there's various scenarios we could
Right.
have on that, and I don't think that it's going to be productive for us to really try to hammer this out in here. Frank, did you have an issue, question?
I did. Golfers receive discounts from green fees by way of their purchase of Coyote Card or Kachina Card. In some cases, they purchase an annual pass. Obviously, the price point now with guest fees has reached a point where for families that want to bring grandkids, the whole family's come for a visit for Easter week, it gets costly. I appreciate that. I don't have any children of my own, at least none that I know of. And so could we not establish a program where residents could pay some dollar amount and then their rec card, when they go to check in, now knows that they are subject to a decreased fee because they've paid this amount upfront like golfers have? Just a thought, a simple way to put it together, perhaps.
I think that's a very clever option. I think what I'd like to do, Cliff, if you would go ahead, I want to be very consciously aware of not encroaching into an operational issue. Okay, we do not want to. That's not our intent. So if you would provide that data by dates or weeks or whatever you have to us, and then we're going to bring this back on the 19th. And at that point, I think we may ask someone to take the lead on this and do some more research on it and to help us come up with options that we can then present and discuss at Budget and Finance.
Okay.
Would that be okay? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, does anyone else from the floor have a question or a comment about this? Go to the mic, go to the microphone and sign in. I think that you've got one.
Okay. Oh, let's see. Okay, guys, not too hard to do this, right? You make a business card, family pass, date for 1 week, and the name. They go on the tag system, and as opposed to a guest fee, they have family guest pass, $35 for the week. The girl at membership fills out the name, charges it $35, attaches that to the business card, and that's their receipt, just like how everyone else has a receipt when they go to the events, right? So how hard is that? Wouldn't be hard. $35, I have a family coming. It will cost me over $125 for them to go to the pool for 5 days. That's crazy, okay? So you give me a family pass for $35, tag, they should be able to put in a family pass for $35 and get business cards made up. How hard would that be, Cliff?
Okay, thank you. We will take that under consideration.
Okay.
Good morning. I am Bruce Lees, 135422. Wanted to speak out against the guest pass policy or avenue. The governing board, on behest or the recommendation of the Budget and Finance Committee, already increased the guest fees at all the facilities that people want to bring guests to, whether it's bocce ball, mini golf, swimming pool, whatever have you. In my 3 years here, the majority of the people that get charged guest fees are bringing their guests to the swimming pools because they don't want to golf at 117 degrees. I don't think that there's any real value to offering a substantially reduced rate to
people that are coming here to recreate, when if they went to Surprise or Peoria or any other facility, there isn't any benefit to showing up to be a participant in that activity. So I believe you should pay to play. I'm more advocating towards the 1 or 2 time visitor that brings a guest or two and doesn't have to pay $10 per session just to have them use a pool that has no extra cost involved, whether it's benefits, wages, pool maintenance, pool chemicals, and all that such. I think it's just an addition to the revenue to offset other areas that are deficient. Again, I'm against the guest pass conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anything from the video?
No questions on YouTube.
Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and proceed to our next item. It's item 4.04. It's the Budget and Finance Policy Review Plan. And that's actually an issue that's internal to the Budget and Finance Committee. Every member of the Budget and Finance Committee has been assigned specific financial policies to review. They received that in email probably about a week ago. And not only do they have their assignment on which policy, but it's also scheduled when they will be, when the policy will be presented to the Budget and Finance Committee. We did a very thorough, comprehensive review of all of our financial policies last year. And I think that we're in really pretty good shape with them. We'll be reviewing them for substantive changes. Every Budget and Finance Committee member will do a thorough and comprehensive review, and then they will follow the schedule that has been outlined. That schedule will be printed for the meeting on the agenda for the particular meeting that is to be presented. So we already have one for September the 19th, FY15, and they go through, this is just an example, October the 10th, 2 will be reviewed by Mr. Bignato, accounting for capital assets and capital expenditures, FY1 and 2. That's just an example of how we have distributed these. So they have the documents. If you have an issue with one of the policies, it would behoove you to contact us. Alrighty? Any questions about that? Alrighty, thank you. None from the floor? Okay. We're going to now close, and I'm going to ask for comments from the committee. And Mr. Bosak, I think I'm going to ask you first.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I'm not working real hot with my left hand. It's kind of awkward. I want to apologize for having to do these remote. I really don't like to do them, but I like 115-degree temperatures less, so being in Sholo for the summer is a really good place to be. I'm heartened by the backgrounds of the new people joining our committee. I think you'll really add an awful lot to our discussion and make a already good group a great group. So I'm anxious to get started and get the work is in front of us. Thank you.
Kellis?
No comment. I'm just very grateful that I'm going to be part of this committee and hope to serve well.
Mr. Davis?
I'd just like to say that I've been inspired by the conversations we've heard this morning, and I can anticipate a great deal of, I can't remember the term you used for robust conversations about the issues at hand, and I look forward to it.
Mr. Miller?
No comment.
Ms. Novello?
No further comment.
Mr. Parsons?
Yes, I plan to go back and review the YouTubes that you mentioned. That'll be helpful, but No, I appreciate that opportunity to serve here.
Mr. Bignato?
Of course. A few weeks ago, in one day, I received 3 envelopes at my home. In one of those envelopes was my invoice for my dues. In the second envelope was my wife's invoice for her dues. And in the third envelope was a reminder to my wife that her Kachina card for golf will be expiring in about roughly 6 weeks. And so I looked at those 3 envelopes and I thought to myself, why do we not have a provision in this community where we can opt out of paper, such as invoices? I realize that there's probably a number of people in the community who still want to have those paper invoices, and they should. But we have no means of opting out. I also learned during my little question and answer session was that this process for these paper invoices between the postage and the people and the printing and on runs about $20,000 a year. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of money, but if we're too proud to try and save some of that $20,000 by doing an opt-out process, then it's something that we really should do. Frankly speaking, I'm a cheapskate, and I think that if we watch our pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. So I don't know if this is something that has to go through the committee, if this is an operational issue, but there are so many people in this community, including myself, who don't receive anything in the mail anymore because it's not necessary. And even though the law says we have to mail out invoices, the law doesn't say that we can't offer an opt-out program. And so I'd like to see that move forward this year.
My initial reaction, Frank, is that borders operational, but it's operational certainly with a financial impact. What I'm going to do, and I'm not going to put Mr. Schwind to ask him to respond to that now, but I think after the meeting, I will have a discussion through Tim with Mr. Schwind about that and where, if anywhere, we should take that. So, all right, I appreciate that. That's all the comments we have. I would like to open it up. Would you like to speak to something?
Carl.
Yeah.
Carl Wilhelm.
Carl Wilhelm.
Facilities Operations Manager. Just a reminder that this is the kickoff meeting for our committees, but this afternoon, charter clubs will be receiving the initial proposed capital, so that document is on BoardDocs. Next week will be properties, and then at your next meeting, you will see the same documents. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Hey, Carl, since you put yourself in the line of fire,
Yes, sir.
looking at the capital items, I see golf ball dispensers from last year that are still sitting, not installed.
That wouldn't be something that I would generally
Okay.
speak to. That would be
Who is responsible for that?
Patrick O'Hara.
As I look at Bill Schwind.
Good morning. Yes, we have new ball dispensers at our facilities. What we ran into was a little bit of a technical problem, back to what Cliff was talking about as far as software writing and getting that finalized. When we attempted to plug those machines in and have them operable, the computer was having a difficult time identifying each of the machines. So when those cards were sold, or we were running through the test program on that, when a card was purchased, no longer a key, right? So when the card was purchased, the only machine that was programmed correctly was the facility at Stardust. So if you bought a card at Trail Ridge or some other golf course, it was not working at that place and it would work at Stardust. So we were in the process last month of trying to get that worked on. I think we're good as far as that goes. Mr. O'Hara is back now from vacation. And I believe IT and Pat have everything worked out now. The printing of the numbers are now coming out clearly on the receipts, so I think we're good to go. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this week we're hot. I'm sorry for the delay.
Thank you. Do we have any closing comments from the audience?
This is just an observation.
If you would identify yourself.
Bruce
for the-
Lees again,
Yeah.
135422. This is in regards to the resurfacing of R.H. Johnson Pool. Initially, there was rumors way before it was even scheduled that this was going to occur and it was going to be a capital expenditure. I was interested because I wanted to plan my vacation around that closure. So I contacted the facilities department, tried to get some information. They indicated that it couldn't be scheduled until after the 1st of July because it had to wait for appropriations from the budget to go into effect. And I thought, okay, and he indicated that the work was going to be scheduled sometime in the vicinity of the middle of September. And lo and behold, before 4th of July weekend, I think the day before 4th of July, it was announced that the project had been awarded and the work was going to commence in August. I found this kind of unusual because if you're not authorized to allocate money until the first of the budget year goes into effect, which is July, how can you solicit bids, get bids, approve bids, and write a contract in 3 days to schedule work that's going to occur in 3 weeks? So I have many questions about how that process works. Is this something that the Budget and Finance Committee is responsible for or has authority regarding over?
No, it's not, but the gentleman that's standing behind you right now that's coming up to the podium, I think will have some input to that.
So our project planning process, starting with budgeting, the rec centers has many relationships over the years, and we do our best to utilize those relationships to get budget numbers. And that's what the governing board ultimately approves. So July 1st, those funds are available, but the conversation with those vendors are happening all year. So the pool is a unique circumstance because it is a sole source vendor. So communicating with them all year long, that when it came time for the bidding process, we already had all the information we needed, and we were able to schedule it for their availability, because they do work all over the country. They come from Texas.
So this was not a bid, this was actually an award to that. In other words, it was a sole source vendor, so there wasn't a bid process associated with it. And the conversations had occurred before the funds could be released, which allowed you to move quickly and move the project up based upon the vendor's availability?
That is correct.
Okay. So it had nothing to do with the fact that it would inconvenience people during the summer versus waiting for the snowbirds to come back. It was purely financial, when the persons could come from Texas to do the work.
I think there's no good time to do a closure like that.
Well, there is actually, sir. It's November, December, January, when nobody uses the pool, snowbirds included.
Well,
so history shows that our highest and busiest season is September through the end of March, and most projects start May, carry over if necessary, and the new fiscal year starts July 1st, and we try to do our best to have all projects completed that affect our general membership by October.
Well, I feel like I was deceived or misled. And again, I didn't suffer any financial loss as a result of it or anything of that nature, but it was an inconvenience because I relied on data provided to me by an official involved in the process, and then it got moved, which caused me to have to reschedule my vacation. And, again, it's not a financial issue, but I thought there was something kind of underhanded about it. And that's my own personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, any other comments? Hearing, I have one other point that I wish to make, is that, could I ask you how many, if we have any other people online before we?
Just one input that I wanted to share, that someone is new to the community, excited to be involved and help out. That's all. Thanks for the comments online, folks.
So our experiment is working, we hope. So, and we'll hopefully refine these processes later. So at that, our next Budget and Finance Committee meeting is September the 19th at 9 a.m. We're going to bring back the issue with the family pass, and we'll try to get some closure to Mr. Bagnato's comments on the opting out on the mailing issues. And we will resurface, there is time on the September 19th meeting for credit card discussions as well. So with that, it is 10:50, and this meeting is adjourned.